In this lesson, we're going to implement a health bar using the UI toolkit. So to start, we're going to create a bunch of directories. So we're going to create a directory called combat system, and then within there, we're going to create a directory called scripts. And then within there, we're going to create a directory called runtime. And then within there, we're going to create a directory called UI. Now, within here, we are going to create a new UI document. And I'm going to call it health bar. In the UI builder, we are going to drag a progress bar. And we're going to set the position to absolute, the picking mode to ignore because we don't want it to be clickable, and then we're going to make the width 25%. We're going to set the maximum value to 1. And we're going to change the text to health. Next, we're going to create a new USS file. And we're going to call it health bar. And then we're going to open up our USSS file. And we're going to override the background color for our Unity progress bar __ progress. And as you can see now, the fill color is red. And finally, we're going to extract our styles to the class health bar. Now we're ready to exit out of here. In Rider, we're going to create a new directory called core, and then within there, we're going to create a interface called iDamageable. And then this interface is going to implement a property called health and a property called max health. And then it's also going to implement two events, one called health changed, and then the other one called max health changed. Now, a trick with Rider is that we can go to the properties for a given directory and tell it that we don't want to include it in the namespace. And so this way we get the nice clean combat system core, which makes it easier and nicer when you import. So now we're going to create a new mono behavior called health UI. And then we're going to make it require a UI document. We're going to create a variable to store the reference to our UI document. And then in the awake function, we're going to use the getComponent function to get it. Next, we're going to create a serialized field for a game object, which we're going to call owner. And then we're going to create a protected field to store a reference to our iDamageable interface. Then we're going to set it by using getComponent on our owner. Now, we can't guarantee that the game object implements the interface, which is why we're going to check in the onValidate function whether our owner has a script that implements the iDamageable interface, and if it doesn't, then we're going to log a warning, and we're going to set the owner to null. Now in the onEnable function, we're going to listen for the health changed event, and we're going to call the function onHealthChanged. We're going to make sure that we set it to protected, and we're also going to make it abstract. Now we're going to do the same thing for the max health changed event. So we're going to create a function called onMaxHealthChanged, and we're going to make it a protected abstract function. In the onDisable function, we're going to stop listening to the events to prevent memory leaks. And then we're going to make sure that we change all of our event functions from private to protected, so that the scripts that inherit from our health UI have access to them. Now we're going to create a new script called HealthBar UI. And it's going to inherit from the health UI script we just created. Now we're going to create a variable to store a reference to our progress bar. And then in the onEnable function, which I need to make virtual, we'll do the same for the disable function. We'll call base enable. Now we're going to use the UI document to query for the progress bar. Now, if we actually look at the source code for the progress bar, you'll see that we currently cannot set the maximum value, and so that's going to change how we approach this. And so our only real option is to set the value by dividing the health by the max health. And because they're both integers, we're going to have to cast one of them to a float. We're going to do the same thing in the onEnable function, as well as onHealthChanged. In the onHealthChanged function, we're going to check to see if our health is greater than 0. If it is, then we're going to check to see whether the style is none. And if it is, then we're going to set it to flex. And this is useful when you have enemies that you don't necessarily want to show the health bar until they take damage. And then whenever the player or an enemy is defeated, we no longer want to display the health bar. We're going to create a new directory called scripts. And then within there, we're going to create a monobehavior called player. and the player is going to implement the iDamageable interface. And so we're going to create a private serialized field health and max health, which are going to back the properties. So we're going to set it so that the health returns are private health. What just happened? We're actually going to have public setters for our properties, and so we're going to differentiate between the get and set functions. And so in the set function, we are going to set the health value by clamping it with 0 and the max health value. That way our health doesn't go below 0 and it doesn't go above our max health if, for example, the player were to be healed. Now we'll repeat the process for our max health. However, in this case, we don't need to clamp it, and we will invoke the max health changed event. We're going to set sensible defaults for our health and max health. And then in the update function, we're going to check to see if the space bar is being pressed. And if it is, then we are going to simulate taking damage by decrementing our health. We're going to create a new empty game object called health bar. And then we're going to add our health bar URI script. I'm going to set the panel settings and set our reference to our health.uxml file. Then we're going to create a capsule called player, and we're going to add our player script to it. Actually, I'm going to remove it just to show you guys the onValidate function working. So as you can see, if they don't have the iDamageable interface, then it won't allow us to store it as a reference. Now if we press play, we can see our health bar, and if I press the space bar, it decrements. When it reaches 0, it disappears.